Imagine for a second trying to uh, run a 2,000-year-old cultural identity through like a corporate rebranding exercise.
Right, yeah. It sounds almost impossible.
It really does. Because think about the logistics. You aren't just changing a letterhead or, putting a new logo on a company website. You are attempting to literally change the global lexicon.
Oh, absolutely. The sheer amount of paperwork alone.
Right. You have to update international treaties,
Hmm.
alter the labels on like billions of dollars in exports, and essentially reprogram how 8 billion people around the world refer to your homeland.
And that is exactly what we saw kick off in 2021.
Yeah, when President Recep Tayyip Erdogan issued that circular demanding a massive shift on the global stage, and I mean, by 2022, the United Nations had officially recognized the change. Made in Turkey became the inescapable new standard.
Which is just a monumental psychological and geopolitical pivot, if you think about it.
Exactly. And welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Today, we are opening up just this massive encyclopedic stack of sources to build a highly detailed, brilliantly colored picture just for you, our listener. We're looking at a nation that literally acts as the hinge of the world.
For decades, the international community just used the anglicized version of the name.
Right, Turkey.
Yeah, but names are never just neutral labels, right? They hold incredible power. By insisting on the indigenous endonym, which is, the exact name they use in their own language, Turkey is making this really definitive statement about national self-determination.
Like they are no longer permitting the English language, or any outside language for that matter, to define them.
Exactly. They are taking back the pen, so to speak.
I find the timing and the motivation of it totally fascinating, though. I mean, the official line from the sources is that the word Turkey represents the culture, civilization, and values of the Turkish nation in the best way possible.
Which makes sense.
It does, but there is also a deeply practical, almost PR-driven element to this.
Yeah.
The state broadcaster openly discussed the desire to shed that pejorative association with the English name for the bird.
Ah, yeah, the Thanksgiving jokes.
Exactly. Let's be honest, it often became the butt of jokes, or it was associated with the slang definition of like a failure or a flop. A turkey of a movie.
Yeah. And why on earth would you allow your ancient, deeply complex heritage to share search engine optimization space with a North American poultry bird?
Right. It's just bad branding.
But if you dig into the etymology in our sources, the contrast becomes even more striking. The root word Turk actually carries these really profound historical associations.
Oh, right. Meaning strength. Yes.
Strength, yes. And also concepts of being created or forged. So when you understand that root, the rebrand isn't just about avoiding a joke, it's about projecting strength. It is a declaration that they're the authors of their own narrative.
I love that. But to truly understand the weight of that narrative, we have to look at the canvas it's painted on. You really can't understand Turkey without understanding the sheer scale and, honestly, the terrifying volatility of the bedrock it sits on.
It's a very dynamic piece of land, to put it mildly.
That's an understatement. If we were building an encyclopedia together right now for you listening, the first page would be a massive color-coded map. We are dealing with a landmass of 783,562 square kilometers.
It's massive.
And the geometry of it is the defining feature of its geopolitics. I mean, picture a massive continental divide here. 97% of this land sits in Asia, sprawling across the Anatolian Peninsula.
Right, and then only 3% is in Europe.
Yeah, a small enclave known as East Thrace.
But that 3%, it is perhaps the most critical sliver of real estate on Earth.
How so?
Because that tiny European fraction holds over 15% of the country's population. And the population today is over 86 million people.
Wow, so it's incredibly dense.
Extremely. You have this incredible concentration of human density, economic power, and historical weight pressed right up against the physical boundary of the continent.
And separating these two land masses is a highly strategic, intensely navigated, aquatic bottleneck. We're talking about the Bosphorus Strait, the Sea of Marmara, and the Dardanelles.
That waterway alone has caused more wars and treaties than we could realistically count on this deep dive.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But let's fill in the colors of this mental map for a second, because the climate here is definitely not a monolith.
Not at all.
If you look to the north along the Black Sea coast, your mental palette needs to shift to these lush, saturated, dripping greens.
Lots of rain up there.
So much rain. We are talking about dense, wet forests and steep alpine slopes that practically dive straight into the crashing water. It is so intensely fertile there that this specific region produces 70% of the world's entire supply of hazelnuts.
Which is wild. And that geography of the Black Sea coast is actually an incredible example of geographic determinism.
Meaning the landscape dictates the culture.
Precisely. The Pontic Mountains run parallel to the coast, creating these incredibly steep, narrow valleys. Historically, because the terrain was so rugged and heavily forested with, oak, beech, and chestnut,
It was hard to get around.
nearly impossible. Traversing from one valley to the next was a massive undertaking. So, what happens? You get profound cultural isolation.
Oh, fascinating. Like who?
Groups like the Laz people, they developed entirely distinct linguistic and cultural traditions simply because the mountains prevented them from interacting with the valley just like 5 miles over. The land literally shaped the culture.
That is amazing. Now, contrast that drastically. Drag your eyes to the west and the south, the Aegean and Mediterranean coasts.
It's a totally different world.
A complete 180. The encyclopedic imagery completely flips here. Now we are in a world of brilliant, sparkling turquoise waters, sun-bleached white marble ruins, and the soft, dusty silver green of ancient olive groves.
It's the quintessential Mediterranean climate.
Exactly. Mild, incredibly wet winters, followed by blistering, dry summers.
Which is the exact climate necessary to support the classical civilizations we associate with antiquity. I mean, it's perfect for the cultivation of olives, grapes, and wheat.
The Mediterranean triad.
Right, but then you push past those coastal mountains and move inland to the heart of the country, the central and eastern Anatolian regions.
And the colors shift again. Now we're looking at stark, unforgiving golds, burnt ochres, deep browns, massive, semi-arid plateaus.
And the climate becomes extreme.
Yeah, the winters are severe, bitterly cold, with snow blanketing the ground for up to a third of the year.
No.
And the elevation pushes upward into these massive vertical peaks, culminating in Mount Ararat in the Far East.
Which towers at an incredible 5,137 meters.
Right. It is a land of sheer physical extremes. But the beauty of those turquoise coasts and golden plateaus sort of masks a violent, grinding subterranean reality.
It really does. Anatolia does not just sit still.
No, it is arguably one of the most geologically active and dangerous pieces of real estate in the world. Our sources highlight that Turkey is situated squarely on the Alpine belt.
And the tectonic reality there is frankly terrifying.
I always picture it like a watermelon seed. You have the African plate and the Arabian plate constantly pushing northward, ramming into the massive Eurasian plate to the north.
And the Anatolian plate is caught directly in the middle of this geological vice grip.
Yeah, being squeezed like a watermelon seed between your thumb and forefinger. The sheer pressure forces the entire Anatolian landmass to constantly extrude westward towards the Aegean Sea.
And that westward extrusion creates incredible friction.
Right.
And that friction has a name. The North Anatolian Fault Zone and the East Anatolian Fault Zone. These are immense tiers in the Earth's crust.
And the human cost of living on this fault line is just staggering. I mean, the historical record is punctuated by catastrophic ruptures.
You have the Erzincan earthquake in 1939, which killed tens of thousands.
Then the devastating 1999 quake near the Sea of Marmara, right in the industrial heartland.
And, of course, the horrific and tragic dual earthquakes of 2023, which fundamentally altered the landscape and the lives of millions of people.
It really makes you ask, how does a civilization even function with that kind of existential threat constantly looming?
It's a profound question.
You're building cities, establishing empires, knowing that at any moment the ground could literally open up and erase centuries of progress.
Well, it forces a remarkable resilience. But it also dictates the very flow of human history in the region.
Tell us so.
Those mountains created by the tectonic collisions, like the Taurus in the south, the Pontic in the north, they acted as massive defensive walls. But they also dictated exactly where armies could march, where trade routes like the Silk Road could flow, and where agriculture could sustain large populations.
So the fault lines actually built the roads, in a way.
Exactly. This highly volatile geographic bottleneck has drawn human settlement longer than almost anywhere else on the planet, precisely because it is the only viable land bridge connecting the resources of Asia to the markets of Europe.
Which brings us perfectly to the next vital layer of our deep dive. If the bedrock is the first page of our mental encyclopedia, the subsequent pages are an archaeological layer cake that almost defies comprehension.
Layer cake is the perfect way to describe it.
Right. Every time an empire marched across this bridge, they basically built their living room right on top of the previous empire's roof.
Literally, in some cases.
So let's dig down to the absolute bottom layer. Göbekli Tepe. We are talking about a site that is nearly 12,000 years old.
which is hard to even wrap your mind around. To contextualize that, Göbekli Tepe predates Stonehenge and the Great Pyramids of Giza by roughly 7 millennia.
Wait, 7,000 years older than Stonehenge?
Yes. And it radically altered our understanding of human sociology. Previously, historians thought humans invented agriculture, settled down, and then built temples.
That was the standard narrative, yeah.
But Göbekli Tepe suggests the exact opposite. The desire to gather for monumental religious or communal building projects might have actually forced hunter-gatherers to invent agriculture just to feed the workers.
Wow, it completely flips the script on human evolution. And right near there, you have the Urfa Man statue from around 9000 BC, which is widely considered the oldest known naturalistic, life-size human sculpture ever discovered.
And from those Neolithic roots, the timeline just accelerates.
Right. You have the rise of the Hittite Empire in the Bronze Age, battling the Egyptians. You have the sweeping Hellenization of the entire region following the conquests of Alexander the Great,
Then come the heavy, enduring footprints of the Roman Empire.
which eventually transitions into the Byzantine Empire, with Constantinople standing as the undisputed, dazzling jewel of the civilized world for 1,000 years.
But the layer that defines the modern ethno-linguistic reality of the country begins its arrival in the 11th century.
The Seljuk Turks.
Yes. This is the pivotal moment when the Seljuks migrate westward from Central Asia into Anatolia. They bring with them an entirely new linguistic structure, a nomadic equestrian culture, and the Islamic faith.
The Battle of Manzikert in 1071 really shatters the Byzantine hold on inland Anatolia, right? It just opens the floodgates for Turkic migration.
It does. And from the eventual fragmentation of that Seljuk state, a small border principality begins to expand. By 1299, the Ottoman Empire begins its rise.
And their rise is just a masterclass in military logistics, statecraft, and assimilation. I mean, by 1453, under the command of a 21-year-old sultan, Mehmed II,
21 years old. Incredible.
they accomplished what was thought entirely impossible. They breached the massive Theodosian walls, conquer Constantinople, and officially extinguish the last dying embers of the Roman Empire.
They rename it, rebuild it, and make it the capital of a new world order. The Ottomans hit their absolute zenith under Suleiman the Magnificent in the 16th century.
At that point, the empire is just a colossal superpower, stretching across 3 continents deep into Europe, across North Africa, and dominating the Middle East. They controlled the holy cities, the major trade routes, and the Mediterranean Sea.
But, the fundamental law of history is that empires, regardless of their magnificence, eventually contract.
Always.
The 19th and early 20th centuries were an agonizing period of decline for the Ottomans. It was characterized by massive territorial losses as nationalism swept through the Balkans.
Coupled with those desperate centralizing reforms aimed at modernizing a sprawling, somewhat archaic state apparatus.
And that contraction fundamentally altered the demographics of Anatolia itself. As the empire lost territory in the Balkans and the Caucasus, millions of Muslims fleeing persecution, war, and ethnic cleansing flooded back into the Anatolian heartland.
So it became a massive refugee hub, creating a deeply traumatized but fiercely protective core population.
Exactly. All of this systemic weakness, territorial loss, and internal ethnic tension violently culminated in the empire's decision to enter World War I.
Now, as we examine the final chaotic days of the Ottoman Empire under the dictatorial rule of the 3 pashas, it is vital that we look directly at the historical record, exactly as it is presented in our foundational materials for this deep dive.
Yes, neutrality is key here.
Absolutely. The sources we're working from provide specific historical background on the fall of the empire, and we're conveying this strictly as it's presented without taking sides.
The text we're working from states, unequivocally, during World War I, the Ottoman government committed genocides against its Armenian, Greek, and Assyrian subjects.
And we are conveying this precisely as it is established in the historical background provided to us. The scale of human suffering during that period is almost unfathomable.
Truly. And following the catastrophic defeat in World War I, the empire was utterly broken.
Victorious Allied powers moved in, occupying Istanbul, and drafted treaties that essentially partitioned the remaining Anatolian territory among European powers.
Which forces a profound existential crisis. You have a population standing in the physical and psychological rubble of a 600-year-old empire.
The monarchy is capitulating to foreign occupiers.
The economy is non-existent.
And the demographics are completely fractured.
Right. And this is the precise moment when modern Turkish identity is forged, not out of imperial triumph, but out of absolute desperate survival.
Which raises the ultimate question. How do you even begin to hit the reset button on a society that broken?
Well, you don't hit reset, you wipe the hard drive completely and write an entirely new operating system.
I love that analogy. And the architect of that new code was Mustafa Kemal Ataturk.
Which brings us to the radical reset of 1923.
Right. Ataturk, who was a brilliant military commander and emerged as the hero of the Gallipoli campaign, leads the Turkish War of Independence.
And he succeeds. He successfully drives out the occupying Allied forces and abolishes the Sultanate, effectively ending the Ottoman Empire forever.
But winning the war was really only the first step for him.
Oh, yeah. His ultimate goal was breathtakingly ambitious. He wanted to transform a multi-communal, industrialized, parliamentary nation-state modeled on Western Europe.
The speed, scale, and audacity of his reforms are virtually unparalleled in modern history. I mean, we are talking about fundamentally altering the daily life, the dress, the legal code, and the very thoughts of millions of people in the span of a single decade.
Let's break down the logistics of this, because it's mind-bending.
It really is. In 1924, he abolishes the caliphate, severing the country's role as the spiritual leader of the Sunni Islamic world.
Massive move.
And then in 1925, he passes the Hat Law.
The Hat Law is fascinating to me because it seems trivial to modern ears, but it was deeply profound at the time.
Why is that?
Well, the fez was the quintessential symbol of Ottoman identity and Islamic piety. By legally banning it and enforcing Western-style brimmed hats, Ataturk was physically forcing the population to visually orient themselves toward Europe and away from the Middle East.
Wow. And he didn't stop at clothing. Our sources highlight that he established equal political rights for women, including the right to vote and hold public office, years before nations like France or Italy did.
But the most staggering reform, to my mind at least, is the alphabet reform of 1928.
Oh, right. He completely discarded the Arabic script that had been used for centuries to write Ottoman Turkish and replaced it with a brand new Latin-based alphabet.
Think about the mechanics of that for a second. You wake up one morning and the newspapers, the street signs, the legal documents, the textbooks, they are all in a completely alien script.
That's insane. Overnight, the entire literate population is essentially rendered illiterate.
It is the ultimate scorched earth policy against the past.
But why take such an extreme measure?
Two reasons, really. Practically, the Arabic script was terribly unsuited for the vowel-heavy Turkish language, which kept literacy rates dismally low. The Latin alphabet was phonetic and much easier to learn, leading to a massive spike in literacy over the next generation.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second reason?
Politically, it was a firewall. By changing the alphabet, Ataturk permanently severed the new generation from the Ottoman archives, the imperial literature, and the broader Islamic world.
He locked the door to the past.
Exactly, so the country could only move forward into a westernized future.
And that new future was codified into what became known as the 6 arrows of Kemalism.
Right.
If we are painting our mental encyclopedia again, picture a crest with 6 stark arrows pointing aggressively forward. They are republicanism, populism, nationalism, lacism, statism, and reformism.
Let's unpack a few of those because they really dictate how the country operates today. Take lacism, for example.
How does it differ from regular secularism?
Well, this is not the American concept of freedom of religion where the state just ignores the church. This is the French model of laicite freedom from religion.
Ah, I see.
It means strict, assertive state control over religious institutions to ensure they never interfere in public policy or the legal system.
And statism is another crucial one from those 6 arrows. And our sources clarify this wasn't necessarily a deep ideological commitment to, like, Marxism. It was raw pragmatism.
Spot on. After 10 years of continuous warfare, the Balkan Wars, World War I, the War of Independence, there was absolutely no private capital left in Anatolia.
Right. Everyone was broke.
Exactly. There was no bourgeoisie to build factories or railroads. If a steel mill was going to be built, the state had to build it. Statism was state capitalism born out of absolute necessity.
And the overarching philosophy of this new republic is explicitly spelled out in Article 5 of their Constitution. It states that the fundamental purpose of the state is, quote, to provide the conditions required for the development of the individual's material and spiritual existence.
It is an incredibly proactive, paternalistic view of the state. The state isn't just a referee, it is the active engineer of society.
Right. And because this new constitutional order was so fragile, so radically different from the past, The Turkish military historically positioned itself as the ultimate uncompromising guardian of the secular republic.
Which explains a lot of the 20th century political turbulence. For decades, whenever the civilian government strayed too far toward religious populism or political chaos, the military would literally roll tanks into the streets.
They viewed coups as a necessary, Control-Alt-Delete mechanism to reboot the system back to Ataturk's factory settings.
Though it is absolutely critical to note that the dynamic has shifted fundamentally in recent decades, particularly after the failed coup attempt in 2016.
Right. That resulted in a massive restructuring of civil-military relations, firmly asserting civilian control.
Exactly.
So we have this fiercely engineered constitutional framework, but a constitution is just theory until it collides with the living population.
Very true.
Let's examine the demographics. Who actually makes up modern Turkey today?
We're looking at a massive, dynamic population of over 86 million people.
And the vast majority identify as ethnic Turks.
Yes, but you also have a profoundly significant Kurdish population, making up roughly 20% of the citizens, primarily concentrated in the southeast.
Along with dozens of other smaller ethnic and linguistic groups.
Right, which creates a massive tension regarding identity.
Yeah, the early republic essentially looked at this incredibly diverse, multi-ethnic remnant of an empire and tried to force it into a singular, homogeneous mold. I used to think of it like a melting pot, but it's not really that at all.
No, not quite.
It's more like taking a massive, intricate Byzantine mosaic, smashing it into pieces, and then trying to force all those distinct, jagged glass tiles into a perfectly uniform, single-color cast. The pieces are inherently going to resist losing their original shape and color.
That is a much more accurate metaphor. And the Constitution attempts to solve this via Article 66, which defines citizenship strictly through a civic lens. It says, everyone bound to the Turkish state through the bond of citizenship is a Turk.
So it's theoretically blind to ethnicity.
Theoretically, yes. Simultaneously, Article 10 prohibits any discrimination based on language, race, color, or religion.
But the theory often clashes with the reality, particularly regarding language, right?
Absolutely. Turkish is the sole official language of the state and the education system. Now, there are exceptions, but they are deeply rooted in 1920s international law.
Specifically, the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne, which established the borders of the modern state.
Right. The treaty mandated specific minority protections, including the right to mother tongue education, but it only recognized non-Muslim minorities.
Oh, interesting.
So Armenian, Greek, and Jewish communities have specific legal protections for their educational institutions.
But the massive Muslim minority group, like the millions of citizens speaking Kurdish, Arabic, or Zaza, they do not fall under those Lausanne protections.
Correct. Therefore, they face a very different constitutional reality regarding the use of their mother tongue in state schools and public administration. It is a constant point of political friction.
It perfectly illustrates how geopolitical treaties signed a century ago still dictate the daily reality of a child entering a classroom today. It's wild.
It really is.
Beyond the identity politics, though, let's look at how this massive population lives. If we pull up the public health and education data from our sources, it paints a picture of a rapidly developing nation.
They operate a universal healthcare system that has pushed the life expectancy up to a very respectable 78.6 years.
That's great. And they have also massively expanded the university system over the last 2 decades, opening institutions in every single province to try and capture the potential of that massive youth demographic.
But urbanization comes with side effects, as we know. The data flags a 29.5% obesity rate.
Which makes sense. When you move millions of people from active agrarian lifestyles in the mountains into sedentary service sector jobs in the sprawling suburbs of Istanbul or Ankara, the diet and health metrics change dramatically.
Right. And employing that massive, young, increasingly urbanized population is the ultimate existential challenge for the state. If you don't find a way to provide jobs and economic mobility for 86 million people, you have a recipe for societal collapse.
So what did the state do? They turned outward and started pouring concrete on an unprecedented scale.
Exactly.
Let's pivot to the modern economic engine. We are talking about a $1.57 trillion nominal GDP. And the beating heart of that economy, the undisputed financial apex, is Istanbul.
A city that spans 2 continents, home to over 15 million people.
And to fuel that economy, the government has embarked on a staggering campaign of mega projects. If you want to understand modern Turkey's ambition, You really have to look at the scale of their infrastructure.
It is awe-inspiring. I mean, they built the new Istanbul airport from scratch, designing it with the explicit ambition to be the highest capacity transit hub on the planet.
They literally want every flight between Asia and Europe to pass through their terminals.
Yeah. And they recently completed the 1915 Sanakal Bridge over the Dardanelles Strait, which currently holds the record as the longest suspension bridge in the entire world.
These are not just vanity projects to look good on a postcard either.
Not at all. This is applied geopolitics. By building the biggest airports, the longest bridges, and vast networks of high-speed rail, they are physically cementing themselves as the unavoidable crossroads of global trade.
They are making it economically unviable to bypass Turkey. And the infrastructure supports a massively lucrative service sector, specifically tourism. In 2024, they welcomed 60.6 million foreign tourists. That makes them the fourth most visited country in the world.
And it is easy to see why, honestly. You have the archaeological ruins of Ephesus, the surreal hot air balloons floating over the fairy chimneys of Cappadocia.
And 625 blue flag beaches.
Right, which is an international standard guaranteeing pristine water quality and safety along the Mediterranean coast.
But tourism is evolving. It's not just people coming for the sun and the history anymore. Medical and health tourism is absolutely booming right now.
It's a massive industry.
People from Europe, the Middle East, and North America are flying in for advanced dental work, optical surgeries, and yes, the famously ubiquitous hair transplant clinics. That sector alone is pulling in over $1 billion annually.
It is a highly diversified economic strategy, but perhaps the most potent economic tool they possess isn't about bringing people into the country.
No, what is it?
It's about what they are beaming out to the rest of the world. We have to talk about their soft power.
Oh, this is one of the most fascinating metrics in our entire deep dive. Right now, Turkey is the second highest exporter of television series in the entire world. They are second only to the United States.
The phenomenon of the Turkish dizi, these sprawling, high-production television dramas, is just a masterclass in a cultural export.
I call them stealth cultural ambassadors.
Yeah.
Because how do you bypass traditional Western media monopolies? You don't send battleships. You send high-drama romances, sweeping Ottoman historical epics, and intense multi-generational family dramas.
Yeah, but why do they resonate so deeply in places like Latin America, the Middle East, Pakistan, and Eastern Europe?
What does the data say?
Well, because they perfectly thread a cultural needle. Western television, particularly from the U.S., often leans heavily into explicit content, deep cynicism, or highly individualistic themes that don't always resonate in more traditional societies.
That's very true.
The Turkish DC offers world-class production values, incredibly attractive actors, and sweeping cinematic scores, but the narrative themes remain deeply rooted in traditional family values, honor, class struggle, and romance.
Romance that relies on intense, smoldering tension rather than explicit sexuality.
Exactly. It appeals to a massive global middle class that wants high-quality entertainment that reflects their own moral frameworks.
So you have a family in Buenos Aires or Lahore glued to their screens, weeping over a fictional family in Istanbul, and they're inadvertently absorbing Turkish culture, fashion, and consumer brands in the process.
Brilliant, right. And when you combine the global reach of these television shows with Turkish Airlines, which flies to more countries than any other airline on Earth, you see a highly sophisticated, holistic geopolitical strategy.
The shows create the cultural desire.
The airline provides the physical mechanism.
And the mega projects provide the destination. Wow, they are meticulously positioning themselves as the cultural and physical center of the modern world.
And what those television shows are broadcasting is a tantalizing glimpse into a culture that is incredibly rich, deep, and highly sensory. Which brings us to the final section of our encyclopedic journey, the tapestry of culture.
Yes, and you cannot talk about Turkish culture without starting with the culinary mosaic.
Definitely not.
And we have to banish the idea that it is just late-night doner kebabs. Turkish cuisine is one of the most sophisticated culinary traditions on Earth.
It is the ultimate historical fusion.
Right. It inherits the incredible refinement and complexity of the Ottoman palace kitchens, where hundreds of chefs spent centuries perfecting dishes for the Sultan. But it mixes that imperial refinement with the raw, diverse ingredients of the geography we painted earlier.
And the food perfectly mirrors that color-coded map.
Okay, let's review the map.
If you are up in the rainy, green Black Sea region, the diet is utilitarian and distinct. Heavy on cornmeal, kale, and the incredibly ubiquitous Hamsi fresh anchovies pulled right from the sea.
But then you travel down to the turquoise Aegean coast, and the entire flavor profile flips. It becomes this delicate, vegetable-forward cuisine where almost everything is braised in local olive oil and paired with wild mountain herbs.
Beautiful. Then move to the southeast, near the Syrian border, to cities like Gaziantep. Here, the cuisine explodes into rich, complex, intensely spicy meat kebabs.
Utilizing pomegranate molasses, pistachios, and those incredibly elaborate syrup-soaked dough desserts like baklava and kunefe.
And binding all of this together is the ritual of Turkish coffee.
It is so deeply ingrained in the social fabric, right? The way marriages are arranged, the rhythm of daily life. It's so important that UNESCO has officially inscribed it as an intangible cultural heritage of humanity. The food is literally a map of the empire's historical reach, from the Balkans to the Persian frontier.
The exact same logic applies perfectly to their architecture and traditional arts.
The skyline of Istanbul is the perfect example of this. You have the breathtaking, heavy, ancient Byzantine legacy of the Hagia Sophia, with its massive, sweeping dome that basically defied gravity for 1,000 years.
And standing right across from it, in direct conversation, are the classical Ottoman masterpieces.
Specifically, the works of Mimar Sinan, the legendary 16th century architect.
Right. His masterpiece, the Selimi Mosque in Edirne, took the Byzantine concept of the dome, stripped away the massive supporting pillars, and flooded the interior with light, creating spaces of incredible mathematical perfection and spiritual weight.
And even on a micro level, the culture is a historical record. Just look at the traditional weaving of carpets and kilns.
To the untrained eye, it's just a beautiful rug.
But to a historian, the ancient geometric patterns woven into those textiles carry the specific, traceable DNA of Persian, Byzantine, Armenian, and Turkic nomadic traditions. Every single knot is literally a piece of data.
And this dedication to preserving the past while adapting to the present extends to their physical traditions and sports, too.
Modern sports are massive there. Football is a complete national obsession. If you ever want to experience pure acoustic chaos, attend a derby match between Galatasaray and Fenerbahce.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Galatasaray winning the UEFA Cup in 2000 remains a seminal moment of modern national pride. But the true, shining jewel of Turkish tradition is something far older. We have to talk about oil wrestling, or yağlı güreş.
It is a visually striking and brutally demanding sport.
Men douse themselves completely in olive oil, wear heavily stitched leather trousers called kuspet, and wrestle in an open grassy field.
And the oil removes the ability to use normal grips or leverage, fundamentally altering the physics of the grappling.
But the mechanics of the sport are almost secondary to the history. Let's look at the Kırkpınar tournament held in the city of Edirne.
Yeah, the timeline here is staggering.
I want to pause the entire conversation just to emphasize a single date provided in our foundational text, 1362.
1362.
This specific wrestling tournament has been held continuously every single year since 1362.
Let that sink in for a second.
That is over a century before Christopher Columbus even thought about sailing across the Atlantic Ocean. Empires have fallen, world wars have raged, tectonic plates have literally shattered cities, and a completely new secular republic was forged.
But every single summer, without fail, for over 660 years, men have gathered in that field to wrestle in olive oil.
Which beautifully and perfectly synthesizes the absolute essence of this deep dive. Whether you are analyzing the meticulous ancient geometry of a Kelm rug, the perfectly balanced regional flavors of a kebab, or a 600-year-old unbroken sporting tradition, Turkish culture is fundamentally defined by one concept.
Preservation through integration.
Preservation through integration. I love that.
They have spent millennia occupying the most contested real estate on Earth. They've taken the influences, the trauma, the ingredients, and the architecture from every conqueror, every neighboring empire, and every shifting geographic reality.
But they don't erase them.
No. They absorb them, synthesize them, and weave them into a tapestry that is distinctly, unbreakably, and fiercely Turkish.
Let's zoom out for a second and look at the massive, high-definition encyclopedia we've just built together over the last hour.
We covered a lot of ground.
We really did. We started at the literal dawn of human civilization with the stones of Göbekli Tepe. We felt the terrifying, grinding reality of tectonic plates squeezing the Anatolian bedrock.
We watched massive empires rise to dominate continents, only to collapse and necessitate Ataturk's radical, scorched earth constitutional reboot.
And we've seen how a young, incredibly diverse demographic of 86 million people is currently driving a $1 trillion modern economy, pouring endless concrete for mega projects while stealthily conquering the globe to the soft power of television soap operas.
It is a nation of profound, dizzying layers and inescapable contradictions.
Which leaves us with one final thought. We always like to end by giving you, our listeners, something to mull over on your own time.
Yes. For centuries, from the Romans to the Ottomans to modern geopolitical analysts, whenever people talk about Turkey, they invariably define it using the exact same metaphor. It is a bridge.
Right, a bridge between East and West.
Yeah.
A bridge between Europe and Asia.
A bridge connecting antiquity to modernity. But think critically about what a bridge actually is.
Okay.
A bridge is a transitional space. It is just something you pass over to get to your actual destination.
Exactly. It implies that the country is just a means to an end for other global powers.
But when you look at the raw data we've unpacked today, their explosive cultural exports captivating billions, their trillion-dollar economic engine, their unyielding determination to build the world's absolute largest transit hubs, and the sheer dynamic demographic weight of their young population.
It raises a deeply provocative question for the 21st century.
It does. What happens to the established global order when the bridge finally decides that it is, in fact, the final destination?
Oh, wow. That completely flips the map upside down. It shifts the center of gravity of the entire world.
It really does.
We hope this deep dive into our sources gave you a vivid, entirely new lens through which to view this incredible, endlessly complex nation. Thank you for sitting down with us, exploring these layers, and letting us paint this picture for you. Stay curious, keep exploring the world around you, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.